Hi, and welcome everybody. My name is Rachel Smith. I'm the IMERC coordinator, and I'm going to be doing this webinar today. I'm just going to wait a couple minutes here. We have about 50 people registered for the webinar, and it looks like people are still joining. So if you just bear with me for a couple minutes, I'll start the webinar shortly, and I'm just going to see if I can get the slide view a little bit better for you. Okay, well, I will get started. So just a few housekeeping rules. We have an hour for this webinar. I'm going to try to go through the slides fairly quickly so that we have time at the end for questions. So please hold your questions till the end. We have a question box that you can type them in if you don't want to forget halfway through the presentation. We also have a feature that allows you to raise your hand. So if you click on the little hand icon, the question icon, you can raise your hand, and then that way I can unmute you at the end and you can ask your question in person. So that's how I'd like to take this. I am recording the session, so I will be posting a copy of the PowerPoint presentation and a recording after today. So if you need to go back, you can find the information. And with that, I will get started here. So thanks again for joining us. So before we get started, I just want to give you a little information about IMERC. So IMERC stands for the Interstate Mercury Education and Reduction Clearinghouse. It was launched in 2001 by the Northeast states. And basically, what we do is we provide technical assistance and program assistance to states that have enacted some kind of mercury legislation. We also provide technical assistance to industry and the general public. So we're that contact, the single point of contact for information on mercury, whether it has to do with reporting, labeling, any information that people are interested in. We're that central point of contact, and we try to answer the question, and then if we can't, I can refer them to a specific state if they have somebody has a specific state-related question. But there are 13 IMERC states, and 8 of them require notification. So that's kind of what we're focusing on today. So the 8 states that require notification are in the dark blue. It's pretty much all of New England, New York, and Louisiana. And basically notification is a requirement for companies that manufacture or distribute any product that contains mercury. So any mercury-added product in the U.S. are required to report on those sales every 3 years. So that's what we call notification, and basically the information that I'm going to be talking about today is a result of that notification requirement. As I said, pretty much any company that manufactures, sells, distributes, or imports a mercury-added product into one of the notification states. So there are 8 states, and they're listed on the slide there. Basically, if you're a company and you sell a product into one of those states, that's what triggers notification. If you're a small company and you only happen to sell in Tennessee, then you might not be triggered for notification here through IMERC. But basically, the report includes information on what type of products that you're selling that have the mercury, the amount of mercury in a specific product, and IMERC lets reporters estimate a content range. So whether it's 0 to 5 milligrams of mercury, 10 to 50, over 100. You can either put the exact amount or you can choose a content range. And also the total mercury used in the product line sold in the U.S. So that's basically of all the products that you sold in that year. You kind of add up the mercury content in each of them, and that's your total mercury amount. And I just want to note that I noticed that some people, the display is weird, and I'm not sure how I can change it. So I'm sorry if you're seeing all my slides, but I don't think I'll be able to kind of fix that here while I'm talking. Sorry about that. But getting back to it, we have more than 665 companies in IMERC's database. So we have an online database where companies report, and this is how many companies have reported at least once in our system. But since we started requiring notification, since states started requiring notification in 2001, we've had about 235 companies completely phase out their use of mercury in their products. We have about 35 that have confirmed to us that they don't sell in one of these 8 notification states. So it's a little bit different. It's not that they totally phased out mercury use, it's just that they don't trigger the notification because they don't sell in these states. And then we have, a handful of companies that have closed, they've gone out of business, they've been acquired by another company, they've merged. So of these 665, I'm currently working with about 300 active filers. So those are filers that are included in the 2016 notification year, which is what this presentation is focused on. This is a link to the e-filing system that companies use to report. Depending on what type of company you are, there are some different forms. Most companies are a single manufacturer. We have a specific form for lamps because it asks a little more detailed information about the type of mercury lamp and the use. Automobiles, multiple manufacturers. We have about 3 trade associations that report on behalf of multiple companies, so they use a specific form as well. And then again, the type of people that would file would be a manufacturer, a distributor, an importer. Because of all of these classifications, when we do the analysis that I'm talking about today, we focus the data on OEMs, so the original equipment manufacturer, rather than somebody that buys a lamp from somebody else and puts it in their product and then sells that final product. We're focusing on the manufacturer, the original manufacturer of that lamp, if that makes sense for you. So here's just a quick summary of the 2016 Mercury-added product data analysis. To note, the data is reported in U.S. tons here. You can see we have product categories that we've kind of identified. Batteries, those are mostly button cell batteries. Dental amalgam, formulated products would be mercury compounds. Lamps, measuring devices. Miscellaneous products is kind of a catch-all, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. Switches and relays, which again, I'll have to talk about a little bit later. We do have some missing data for the last 2 reporting years for that group. And thermostats. And I'm going to go through each of these categories separately, but what you can see here from this table is that all of the categories have shown a reduction in mercury use since 2001, and overall, we're seeing about a 71% reduction. So from an estimated total of almost 130 tons of mercury being put in products sold in the U.S. in 2001 to now an estimated total of about 37 tons put in products sold in the U.S. So you can see that's a big reduction there. Here is a graph showing the Mercury-added battery sales in our triennial reporting years. So you can see for 2016, it's very low. You know, it's 0.03 tons. And basically, these are some of our observations, is that it's almost a total decline of about 99%. 51 companies that have sold Mercury-added button cell batteries or batteries have confirmed a Mercury phase-out. In the 2016 analysis, there's 16 companies included, so that 0.03 tons comes from 16 companies. And some of those reported a zero because they essentially didn't sell any or they had phased out. We're estimating about a 94% reporting compliance for this category. And what I mean by that is, of all the companies that I expected to report in 2016, all of them except one submitted their 2016 notification. So that's like a 94% rate. That one company is included in this analysis, so they're included in the 0.03 total. And what I did was I just assumed that their sales were the same as 2013. However, this company in particular has told us that they phased out in May 2017. So when so if they report for the next reporting year, I'm assuming it's going to be zero, because if they phased out in 2017 and getting rid of the inventory, it should be zero. I just wanted to note that there are 4 states that have restrictions on Mercury-added batteries. Here's dental amalgam. As you can see, dental amalgam is a pretty big category, but it has shown a steady decline over the years from over 30 tons to about 11 now. Again, dental amalgam is used in amalgam fillings. I think a lot of dentists are kind of moving away from that to the composite resin fillings, but again, it still makes up a good amount of the mercury that's being sold in the U.S. at 11 tons. The total decline has been about 64%. We have 5 companies included in our 2016 analysis, and that represents 100% of reporting compliance. And what that means is that these 5 companies have reported to us consistently from 2001 every 3 years until 2016. So we, feel that we think we have that group covered. We know that there could be additional companies suspected of manufacturing or selling mercury amalgam, and at least one we've tried to contact and ask them about reporting, and we just have not been successful. So again, it's something I'm going to talk about a little bit later in the presentation, is that we're always kind of finding out about new companies. They're coming on our radar, so that's why it's not always apples to apples. But for this particular group, it's fairly consistent. And just, one note that Rhode Island does have a restriction on dental amalgam because of its mercury content, but as with a lot of other states, there are exemptions to that rule. So dental amalgam is still used in Rhode Island as long as it's been exempt. Formulated products, these would be mercury compounds and chemical products. As you can see, this is our smallest category of mercury-added products, but it's kind of shown a very up and down over the years. So while, it was just over 1 ton in 2001, it's like almost 1.5 tons in 2007, and then back to, less than 0.77 tons in 2016. So, it's small. It doesn't make up a huge portion of the mercury that's in the U.S., but it's not going away. This does not include elemental mercury, so I just want to make a note that the notification is for mercury-added products. And elemental mercury itself is not considered a product. So it's really only mercury compounds. So mercuric chloride, mercuric nitrate, thimerosal was in there, early on. Those are the type of examples of formulated products. So you can see, the overall it's declined by about 32%. There was a slight increase in recent years. And, what we found that a lot of companies merged. And so sometimes if a couple, a larger company merges with a couple smaller companies, then even though we've never heard of them before, they get kind of looped into the notification requirements. So I think that may have happened. 16 companies have confirmed a mercury phase out, and that's mostly thimerosal was often used in formulated products, and that has been phased out. 29 companies are included in our analysis, and I'm assuming that represents about 93% of reporting compliance. So that means of the 29, 2 of them did not report for 2016, but I assumed that their contributions were the same as in previous years. So that's what I mean about compliance. Just to note, there's 4 states that have restrictions on formulated products. So Connecticut, Louisiana, and Rhode Island, they have mercury content restrictions. And that's basically, they have restrictions for any type of, formulated product that contains more than 250 parts per million of mercury or 50 parts per million of mercury. Minnesota has a ban on mercury use in cosmetics. So, that would also fall under this category. Mercury-added lamps is our next category, and you can see here also there's a little bit of up and down, but right now in 2016 there's been a significant decrease over the years. So we're seeing about just over 3 tons of mercury being sold in mercury-added lamps, and so those are any type of fluorescent lamps, HID lamp, some specialty lighting. And I think what we found is the reason that the mercury-added lamps are going down is because of a lot of people switching to LEDs. So LED lamps do not have mercury, and they're more energy efficient even than some of the fluorescents. So I think that is contributing to the decline. And I expect that the next reporting year it will be even less than 3 tons. So again, some of our observations, it's been about 71% decline since 2001. We have 49 companies that have confirmed mercury phase out. There's 178 that are included in this 2016 analysis. So by far, the lamps is our biggest group of reporters. This includes, really big companies as well as some smaller ones that make really specialty lamps. Neon lamps are also included in this category. So it's pretty diverse. We're estimating about 93% reporting compliance. So there's 12 companies that I think need to, sold products in 2016 and they should report. So they're included in here, and I'm just assuming that their contribution is the same as previous years. And, there's actually 4 states that ban or restrict mercury-added lamps, to correct that. Connecticut, Louisiana, and Rhode Island. Vermont has a ban on neon lamps. Measuring devices. So this would be thermometers, barometers, sphygmomanometers, which are blood pressure cuffs, any other type of measuring devices. Right now, you can see there's a pretty big decline in the past few years. It's been kind of steady. Pretty much what we found is that early on we had a lot more barometers, manometers, sphygmomanometers, things like that. that have kind of been phased out and gone to non-mercury alternatives. What's left are thermometers and pretty much the laboratory thermometers. So that's, those items kind of make up the biggest contribution here. And it did increase a little bit in 2016. Again, it could be just, better reporting of companies. So we have an overall decline, and again, 85%, so pretty good decline. Recent years, it's gone up, but that I think is just, due to the fact that we're finding out about more companies and bringing them into our system and getting them to report. So 12 companies have confirmed a phase out. 11 companies are included in this analysis, and it's basically 91% reporting compliance. So one company out of these 11 did not yet report in 2016, and again, we're assuming that they're the same as previous reporting year. I didn't list the specific bans here, but there's at least 11 of the IMERC states here have certain bans or restrictions on measuring devices, and some of them have more restrictions than others. What I mentioned is now we're mostly seeing the measuring devices that are coming in are laboratory thermometers, and those are banned in some states, but they're still subject to notification. They're allowed to be sold in Massachusetts, so that's kind of one of the big triggers for those type of products. Miscellaneous products is kind of a catch-all category, and you can see it's kind of fairly consistent here. No big surprises. It's 2.22 tons we estimate in 2016. So about 48% decline from 2001. We have 6 companies that have confirmed mercury phase out. There's 20 companies included in this analysis, but they're really different. It's a catch-all category, so you can see here some examples. Pressure transducers, we include in this category film, electrodes, and electrical connectors. Really weird uses of recoil reduction suppression in firearms. We have at least one company that reports for that. A mercury shock absorber for a tennis elbow. We have at least one company who reports for that. So, it's hard to make kind of sweeping observations about this because it's so diverse, but, that's one of the observations, I guess, is that, mercury is used in, really random products, a really diverse group of products that has a wide range of uses. So you never know. Basically, most of these, the reason they're included is because they're, probably reported on by like 2 or 3 companies or one company. So they don't really warrant their own category, but they do contribute, over 2 tons. So it's important to kind of have them in the overall picture. Mercury-added thermostat. So this is obviously a kind of a success story we have here. You can see in the early years, it was a big contributor to mercury use in the U.S. There was a big jump, a big decrease in 2007, and then since then, it has really gone to almost nothing. In 2016, we didn't have any manufacturers selling mercury-added thermostats in the U.S. I think it's all gone to digital now, for energy savings and ease. So we don't expect this to kind of go up or anything. We expect it to stay about 0. And yeah, as I've noted, this product category was completely phased out as of 2015. So we have had 8 thermostat companies reporting to us since 2001, and they've reported every year. And as of 2015, the last manufacturer that was kind of holding out sold their last mercury-added thermostat. So they've phased out. by 2015. So now, but what we do have to think about is that mercury-added thermostats, they could last about 30 years. So if there was a few sold, in at least 2007 and a couple maybe in 2015, they're still in use in homes and other properties in the U.S. So, and that's totally fine. It just comes to at their end of life when a homeowner is getting rid of their thermostat or they're switching over to a digital one. That mercury needs to be managed at the end of life. So it's just something to think about and something that I think our states are really cognizant of as we kind of get further away from that big slug at the beginning of the year or beginning of the reporting cycle. In 2001, there was 14 tons of mercury in new thermostats. That was 18 years ago. Many of them could still be in use. But I think attributing to the success that no new ones are being made is that at least 10 IMERC member states and several more states in the U.S. probably do restrict the sale of mercury-added thermostats. So I think, that has contributed to this decline as well. So if you remember the summary table that I showed at the beginning of the presentation, there was a row for mercury-added switches and relays. I don't have any graphs for them because, we have a little dilemma going on. And basically, for IMERC, we've had about 60 companies report on sales of mercury-added switches and relays at least once since 2001. About half of them have told us that they've phased out mercury over the years, but the other half haven't. So we're estimating that there's at least 27 companies that we've kind of know of that have reported before that are still making these products. However, since 2010, all 8 of our notification states ban the sale of mercury-added switches and relays. They do have a few exemptions, so sometimes companies can apply to a state for an exemption to sell a banned product, and we do have a few companies that have done that. But for the most part, 2010 is kind of our last, accurate inventory for this category, because after that, many companies couldn't sell in the notification states, and if they didn't want to go through the process of getting an exemption, they just decided not to sell. So in 2016, we had 10 companies reporting on mercury-added switches and relays. So these 10 companies were granted an exemption. That's only a 37% reporting rate if we assume that the other 27 companies are still in business, which we don't know. And because it's not a very good reporting rate, I didn't go into any further analysis because I just didn't think it would be that accurate of a picture. So basically, the takeaway is that this is, something that we know about. It's kind of a gap. It's a data gap that we know about, and IMERC does what we can in collecting information. But if if a company does not sell in one of the states, then this reporting isn't triggered for IMERC. So some more data caveats and limitations. Again, this is not the entire, we know that this might not be the entire universe of products. We're constantly, finding out about new companies, new manufacturers, or mergers that we have to get into the fold. In some cases, this may be a total overestimate of the amount of mercury in a product category. And as I noticed, if there was some companies that didn't report at all in 2016, I just assumed they continued to sell mercury-added products, and I assumed that their total contribution was the same as in previous years. But it could be that these companies stopped making mercury or went out of business and they just didn't tell us, or I haven't been able to confirm that during research. So again, I'm kind of overestimating here. again, as I mentioned, especially with the switches and relays, is only manufacturers and distributors that sell into one of our notification states. So if you sell into every other state except for the 8 that require this report, you are not included in this analysis. We don't include products, this reporting started in 2001, so we don't have product information prior to 2001. We don't collect we don't collect data on products exported outside of the U.S. or during in-between reporting years. And also, we are only focused on mercury that's used in the final product. So mercury that's emitted during mining, manufacturing, or other parts in the product's life cycle, that's not included in this analysis. It's only the end product that's sold in commerce. Just quickly, I'm going to show you a few slides about supporting membership. So IMERC, we have 13 state members, and those are basically the states that have some kind of mercury legislation. About 2 years ago, we decided to open up membership outside of states. So we've invited manufacturers, distributors, importers of mercury products, trade associations, non-governmental associations, so nonprofits, academic institutions. We've invited them to be members, and it's just a way to kind of expand our reach and our audience. Some of the benefits are technical assistance, participation in calls and webinars. This webinar was open to everybody, but sometimes we do have webinars that are restricted for members only. There's discussions, peer reviews, so like peer review of this data, and other opportunities, and then promotion of efforts to reduce mercury. So these are some of the benefits. If you're interested, this is the website. You can find more information about IMERC membership. This is our dues structure. So again, as our states, as the dues for our states is based on how big they are and their population size, dues for supporting members is based on the size of the company or the organization. And then finally, here's my contact information. So if you have any questions after this presentation, you can feel free to contact me. All of the information that I talked about is in our Mercury-added product fact sheet. So there's much more detail in them about each product category. We'll go there now. So basically, I updated them with the 2016 data that I just went over today on the webinar. But if you want to know a little bit more about batteries, it's really not a fact sheet. It's more like some kind of educational document because it's 6 pages. But it gives you a lot of information about the types of batteries that have had mercury in them before. A little more detailed analysis about the reporting. So if you want to kind of get into the weeds about how many companies are included, how many are phased out. Here's the chart I showed you during the webinar. So it's a little more commentary on some of the observations, details about some of the product phase-outs and states that have restrictions, collection and recycling programs, if there are any, non-mercury alternatives, and then the data caveats that are the same for all of the states. So again, if you want to kind of get into some of the details, we have fact sheets on the 6 of the categories that I talked about today. We don't have one on the miscellaneous products because it's just it's such a diverse group. It kind of varies. It doesn't lend itself to this kind of information. And we don't have a fact sheet on switches and relays. It's archived as of 2010 because that was kind of the last year that we had a really good data set for that type of product. So with that ends my formal presentation. So I'm going to open up for questions. I'll start by reading the ones that have come in through the question box, and then I'll go and kind of address the people that might have their hand raised. So let's see if I can do this. So bear with me, guys. Sorry about this. Okay, so one of the questions is, what are you doing or could you do to identify companies that should be reporting but aren't? So in the early years, IMERC spent a lot of time, providing outreach, identifying companies through Google searches, through TRI reporting and other reporting systems, sending letters, making phone calls. By the time 2010, probably by 2010 came along, we had like a really good handle on the list of companies, and it stayed pretty stable. Every now and then we hear about somebody that's, in our stakeholder groups, hears about a company, and we reach out to them. And again, IMERC, what we do is we send, usually an outreach letter, and do you make Mercury-added products? Do you sell them in these states? Are you aware that you need to report? So we'll, send maybe 1 or 2 letters, follow up with a phone call. We can't enforce anything. IMERC is, a nonprofit organization, so we're kind of just there to provide the outreach and information. So, that's kind of what we can do. And hopefully, it's up to the companies to comply. If a state goes to a store and finds a Mercury-added product on sale, and, it's made by a company they never heard of before, and then they ask me, hey, does this company report? And they don't, that state could definitely have a case to follow up and say to whatever company that is and say, hey, I saw your product on sale or online, and I don't know, I don't know why you're not reporting, but you need to report, something like that. So, we're not focused on it right now, but it happens. It happens every year that we find more and more companies that kind of come into the fold, some voluntarily, and some, just like I said, somebody stumbles across something online or in a store, and we follow up when we get them to report. But there's also a handful that we follow up with and they don't report. They just refuse to. And at IMERC, I'm not able to do anything about that, except harass them, which sometimes I do. Again, I'm sorry about the whole display for my presentation. I hope it wasn't too distracting, but somebody noted that my slides, you could see two slides. Okay. So somebody asked about penalties imposed on non-reporters, especially companies involved in internet sales. So the penalties are specific to the state. So again, each state that has a notification requirement has specific penalties that include fines or even jail time. And so that state, if there was a non-reporter, they would have to send them a notice of violation or notice of noncompliance themselves and then issue. I haven't had any states kind of consult me for any of that, and where I'm not aware of any states kind of working together to issue a notice of violation or noncompliance, but that definitely could happen. We have started, looking more into internet sales, especially in Amazon.com, and we've had some conversations with the folks there actually. about states that ban certain products. It's mostly, our conversations have mostly focused on making sure products that are banned for sale in a certain state or restricted are not sold into that state. So that's kind of where our focus has been. But, you know, it obviously includes information about this reporting and labeling as well. Anytime that we talk to these third-party sellers, so third-party seller would be something like Amazon or Target or Walmart, we make sure that they know about what their, you know, they know what the companies that sell through them are supposed to do. That makes sense. So it's more of an outreach role, I would say. On slide number 7, okay, this has to do with batteries, and I'll pull it up for you. So slide number 7 was mercury use in batteries. And you can see that in 2010, it looked like there was a huge jump in mercury-added battery sales. We don't know for sure, but this time kind of corresponded with bans in the EU. And so companies overseas, especially international companies, had to comply. I don't know when it was initiated, but I guess it was 2010 or after. They had to comply with the restrictions on mercury use in batteries. And so, you know, what could have happened is that these companies that had them wanted to get rid of their stock. So in 2010, you know, they said, we have all this stock of mercury-added batteries. We can't sell them after this year because there's all these bans in Europe and in the US. So they, you know, they pretty much got rid of their inventory. So that's kind of one explanation that we're not totally certain about, but it kind of makes sense. And you can see that, you know, now it's basically nothing. It's very low mercury use in batteries. So for dental amalgam, I mentioned that Rhode Island has a restriction on the sale of mercury use in dental amalgam. And this does not mean that dental amalgam cannot be used in Rhode Island. No, that's not what it means. It means that any company that sells dental amalgam, they have to file with Rhode Island a request to exempt them from the rule, exempt them from the restriction. So basically, because Rhode Island's law is that any product that has mercury content over 10 milligrams of mercury is restricted, and dental amalgam has over 10 milligrams of mercury, and so that's kind of why it gets triggered. But in all cases, you know, they are allowed to sell dental amalgam. They have to provide this kind of notification and exemption request. So I think this next question is from a company. They would like to confirm mercury phase out since LEDs have replaced LCDs lights in 2013. How can I check whether my company has claimed we do not sell this product or not? So the easiest way to check is to send me an email. My contact information was on this last slide. And I can look up your company in our database. You can also look it up, but if each company has one user, so they have one set of credentials, they have one user that reports. So if you're not the reporter, you'll have to ask me to, you know, log in for you and give you the credentials, figure out who in your company has that information. So again, if you want to tell me that your company has phased out, send me an email and I can confirm that to you. Or say, oh, thanks for telling me, and then I'll have you sign a certification that that's what you want to do, and I can document that phase out. So fluorescent microscopes and labs may use mercury-containing bulbs. Are these products included? Yes. Basically, they would be included in the lamp category. Because we focus on the OEM data, so we focus on the data from the original equipment manufacturer, so the mercury component manufacturer. So we focus on the data of the mercury bulbs. So if a company buys a bulb and puts it in their microscope in a lab, they do report on that microscope that it has a mercury bulb in it. But when we do the analysis, we're focusing on the mercury bulb data that actually comes from the lamp company that made that bulb that went into the microscope. So that way we're not counting that specific bulb twice. So basically it's in our system, but it might not, be presented in the analysis that way because I'm not looking at the microscopes, I'm looking at the bulb. There's a question about how mercury is used in film, and I would have to look into that and get back to this person. Again, that was one of our kind of miscellaneous products. And what I'm assuming is that it's some kind of formulated product, but I'll have to open the file after the webinar today and look into it in more detail. When people do report on their products, they do have to include the purpose of mercury in that product. So if they are reporting on film and they said this film has 5 milligrams of mercury, they do have to put what the purpose of mercury is. It might be a preservative, but I can look in it and confirm for you after today. Yes, and just to clarify, when companies report through the notification, they are supposed to report on their U.S.-wide sales. So even though there are 8 companies that require notification, that just triggers the process. So those 8 companies trigger the process, but those 8 states trigger the process, but the company is supposed to report on U.S. sales. So it's not like a company has to go look at all their sales data and then take out the numbers for Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and report that way. They just look at their total U.S. sales and report. That gives us a more accurate picture, and I think it's easier for the companies to collect the data that way as well. Yes, and for companies that are currently reporting to us, we are doing maintenance on our system right now. We're kind of updating it. So it's under maintenance. We're expecting to open it the end of March 31, April 1st. So at that point, you'll be able to check your status. If you are a manufacturer or distributor, you'll be able to report on your mercury sales for 2018. But it's currently under maintenance as we implement some of those changes. So anybody that's on the webinar here that is a reporter, I'm going to do my best to keep you in the loop over the next couple weeks as we work to get this all up to date. And so the reporting will be for 2018 data this year for all of the reporters. And going back to miscellaneous products, I did include some examples of them here. I do have a list of all of them somewhere, but these were like the main ones. And so I think there could be a couple other weird ones that, in the interest of space, I didn't include every single one. But I can definitely, we do have that information and we keep track of it. So This is an interesting question about, is there anything being done to bring other states into the reporting and bans? At this point, I think there are a lot more states that do have bans on Mercury-added products, and because they're not members of IMERC, I don't necessarily follow them. I don't, kind of keep track of them. I'm focused on our members and our bans, but there are other states that do have bans on Mercury-added products. And so I do include that information where I'm able to. I will bring up, if you go on our website, you can find anything you really want. But so we do have a web page that says product bans and phase out. And just, automobile switches is the first product category. You can see here I have information for all of our IMERC states, but there are several other states that are not members, but they may have bans, or they may have this is not a great example, they may have collection requirements. Fever thermometers, the common one. Again, this detailed information is for our states, but there are other states that do have bans. So again, they're not members of IMERC, so I'm not actively, putting that I'm not actively looking for these products for these states. I'm focused on our IMERC members, but they certainly are, welcome and fit to join IMERC. As far as reporting, I don't believe any other states are considering mercury reporting at this time. I do know that EPA is, so there is a federal reporting requirement that's coming into effect. So I think, that federal reporting requirement will trigger a lot of companies, obviously a lot more companies to come into the fold. And so in that way, I don't think any states would kind of spend the effort and the energy to have their own if they can rely on the federal one. And that goes into our next question, which is the connection of IMERC to the US EPA mercury reporting rule. So EPA is coming out with a mercury reporting rule. They published in June. And basically, it's a federal requirement. So if companies sell mercury-added products in the U.S., anywhere, not just those 8 notification states, they do have to report to EPA. Some of the differences are that EPA is also concerned with elemental mercury. It's concerned with mercury in the manufacturing process, which IMERC is not. And it's concerned with imports and exports of mercury. So whereas IMERC is concerned with mercury-added products only that are sold within the U.S. or imported within the U.S. IMERC is updating its database. That's why, I mentioned that we are, its database is down for maintenance. We're updating our system so that it can be compatible with EPA's reporting time frame and guidance. So that's something that I'm just going to have to keep people on top of as we work to ensure that, we're asking for the right information. And we do not have data on, mercury as a byproduct or mercury as a, contamination within another product. We're focused on intentionally added mercury in a product. So there's mercury put into a product for a specific reason. That's what's considered a mercury-added product, and that's what we focus on. Whereas EPA's system, I think, will include, mercury used in the processing of that. So I'm getting to the last few questions here. Will the reporting schedule after EPA's rules continue? every 3 years as it did before? Yes. So basically, as I mentioned, IMERC's updating its database so that we can follow EPA's timeline, and EPA is going to be on a 3-year reporting year, and IMERC is going to continue the 3-year reporting year to correspond to EPA's. So the next data analysis, this was of 2016. EPA is requiring 2018 data, so IMERC will be requiring 2018 data, and then the following will be 3 years after that, so 2021 data. So this is this will be a weird year in the cycle, but after that it should be smooth. This is a question specifically about the switches. Let me pull that up. So again, what I said is, this is kind of anecdotal information. There's 35 companies that have told us they do not sell in 8 IMERC states. So they make mercury-added switches and relays, or they use mercury-added switches and relays as a component in another product. So, it's both the manufacturers, of the OEMs or products in another OEM. Basically, we when they tell us that, we do have them sign a document, so we have them confirm to us and sign a certification that we have on file that they don't sell into these 8 states, or if they want to sell in those 8 states, they understand that they need to file an exemption. There's a question about wheel weights, and yes, the specific company that makes wheel weights, which is a mercury-added product, I would classify that as a miscellaneous product, not as a switch and relay. So they wouldn't be in this 35 company group here, but they have told us they don't sell in the IMERC states, and they're based in California. So they're not included in the analysis. They don't notify. But again, I wouldn't necessarily think that somebody that manufactures wheel weights would be considered a switch and relay manufacturer. They would probably be, miscellaneous. So that is all the questions I have in the queue, and I don't see any hands up here. Oh wait, I do. So Mark Herwig, I don't know if you were still on the phone, but you had your hand up. If you want to ask a question, we have about 3 minutes left. I can try to answer it for you. Okay. I'm going to assume that everybody's questions were answered. I think, if you have other specific questions or concerns, the best thing to do is probably to send me an email. Take a look at the fact sheets here for more information about the trends. Again, this, webinar was really to kind of showcase the trends of mercury that we're seeing, what we do with the information. So manufacturers are always like, why am I reporting to you? Like, why do you need this? This is what we do with it. We do an analysis. We provide the information to the states. The states use this to inform their own decision-making and inform their policies in regards to mercury-added product legislation. So it's important for the states to know, excuse me, what kind of products could be coming in that have mercury in them. And with that, it is 3 o'clock, so I'm going to end this presentation. Thank you all for joining, and sorry for any technical difficulties at the beginning. But yes, we will be posting the PowerPoint and recording after today. So thank you all.